I woke up at 2 a.m. to the sound of a shovel hitting dirt. My bedroom window faces the backyard, and through the half-open blinds, I could see my husband in the moonlight, digging. He was shirtless, despite the November cold, his back glistening with sweat, and the hole he'd carved into the ground beside our old magnolia tree was already waist-deep. And when the police finally dug it up, what they found underneath changed everything I thought I knew about my life. Thank you so much for being here. Your presence keeps this channel alive. I'd love to hear from you. What city and country are you watching from? Share in the comments so we can build this community together. Please keep in mind, this story blends fictional details for entertainment and educational purposes. Any resemblance to particular names or places is coincidental. That said, the core message I'm offering here is something I hope will inspire and guide you. My name is Olivia Marsh, and until that November night, I believed I had the kind of life people envy quietly. My husband Drew and I lived in a restored craftsman bungalow on Bellevue Street in Savannah, Georgia, the kind of house tourists photograph when they walk through the historic district. Drew managed a chain of 3 auto body shops his father had started in the 80s. He was charming, steady, the guy who coached Little League on Saturdays and brought my mother flowers on her birthday without being asked. Our neighbors, the Petersons, once told us at a block party that we were the couple that made marriage look easy. I remember laughing at that. I should have been paying closer attention. The crack started about 4 months before that night. Drew began working late, sometimes not coming home until after midnight. He said the Pooler location was understaffed, that he had to cover the closing shift himself. His phone, which used to charge on the kitchen island every night, suddenly went everywhere with him. Screen always flipped down. New passcode I didn't know. He got irritable over nothing. I left a load of laundry in the washer too long, and he slammed a cabinet door so hard the hinge cracked. That wasn't Drew. That had never been Drew. And then there was the cologne. Drew wore the same cedar and sandalwood scent since college. But twice in October, when he came home late, I caught something different on his collar. Something floral and sharp, like jasmine. I told myself I was imagining things. 6 years of marriage, 2 years of dating before that. You don't throw suspicion at someone you've built a life with over a smell. So I buried it. On the night of November 8th, everything I'd buried came clawing back to the surface. It was just past 7 in the evening. Drew was supposedly at the Pooler shop again. I was in the living room grading papers. I teach 4th grade at Garrison Elementary, and parent-teacher conferences were the following week, so I had a stack of progress reports to finish. My phone buzzed on the couch beside me. The screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen in weeks. Mom. My mother, Diane Marsh, was 61 years old, a retired school librarian who lived alone in a cottage on White Marsh Island, about 20 minutes from us. She was the most unshakable woman I'd ever known. Raised me by herself after my father left when I was 3. Worked 2 jobs to put me through college. Never complained, never crumbled. So when I answered and heard her voice shaking, my blood went cold. Olivia, baby, I need you to come here, right now. Mom, what's wrong? Are you hurt? I can't explain on the phone. Just come. And Olivia, don't tell Drew. Please, whatever you do, don't tell Drew. The line went dead before I could ask anything else. I sat there for maybe 10 seconds, my heart hammering, staring at the phone like it might explain itself. My mother had never told me to hide something from my husband. Never. I grabbed my coat, my keys, and drove. White Marsh Island at night is quiet in a way that feels deliberate, like the marsh grass and the live oaks are holding their breath. My mother's cottage sat at the end of a shell gravel lane, a small yellow house with a tin roof and azalea bushes she'd planted the year she moved in. When my headlights swept across the driveway, I saw her front door standing open. The porch light was off. I called her name as I got out of the car. Nothing. Just the rustle of Spanish moss and the distant croak of frogs in the marsh. I walked up the porch steps, my legs unsteady, and pushed the door wider. When I flipped the light switch, my stomach lurched. The living room was destroyed. Her reading chair was overturned. The side table where she kept her crossword puzzles and her tea was smashed. Pieces of her favorite blue mug scattered across the hardwood. And on the floor near the hallway, a smear of blood. Not a lot, but enough. Enough to make me scream. I searched every room. Kitchen untouched. Bedroom empty, bed still made. Bathroom door open. Nothing disturbed. But when I reached the back door, I found her reading glasses on the ground outside, one lens cracked, lying in the dirt beside a set of heavy boot prints that led toward the marsh and disappeared. I called 911. My hands were shaking so badly the dispatcher had to ask me to repeat the address twice. 2 patrol cars arrived within 10 minutes. Then a detective, a woman named Cassandra Holt, mid-40s, sharp eyes, no-nonsense energy. She took my statement on the front porch while officers processed the scene inside. I told her everything. The phone call, my mother's fear, the instruction not to tell Drew. "Does your mother have any conflicts?" Detective Holt asked. "Anyone who might want to harm her?" "No. She's a retired librarian. She reads mystery novels and feeds stray cats. Everyone on this island knows her. She doesn't have enemies. Any recent changes in her life? New relationships? Financial issues?" "Nothing. She's been the same for 30 years. Detective Holt studied me. "And your husband, Drew Marsh? Why would your mother specifically tell you not to inform him?" "I don't know. That question was eating me alive. I don't know. She told me to go home, to try to rest, that they'd work through the night and call me the instant they found anything. Rest. I wanted to laugh. I drove home in a fog. Drew's truck was in the driveway when I pulled in. The house was dark except for the glow of the TV in our bedroom upstairs. I found my husband under the covers, apparently asleep. I didn't wake him. My mother's voice echoed through my skull. "Don't tell Drew." I changed clothes and lay on top of the blankets, staring at the ceiling, listening to Drew breathe. Every time a car passed outside, my pulse spiked. Sleep shouldn't have come, but exhaustion is a thief. It takes you whether you're willing or not. The sound of a shovel woke me. My eyes snapped open. The clock read 2:07 a.m. Drew's side of the bed was empty. Through the window, in the pale wash of moonlight, I could see him in the backyard. Digging. I watched, barely breathing, as he shoveled dirt with a kind of desperate energy I'd never seen from him. After maybe 15 minutes, he stopped, reached behind the magnolia tree, and dragged something toward the hole. A duffel bag, large and clearly heavy. He shoved it into the ground, then began filling the hole back in, patting the dirt flat, spreading dead leaves over the top to hide the disturbance. When he finished, he stood there for a moment, chest heaving, staring down at the spot. Then he walked back inside. I heard the downstairs shower turn on. My mind was screaming. My mother was missing. There was blood at her house. And my husband had just buried something in our yard at 2 a.m. I wanted to run outside and dig it up with my bare hands. But something stopped me. Fear. Not of what was in the ground, but of who I might be married to. I waited until Drew came back to bed, until his breathing slowed, until I was sure he was asleep. Then I crept downstairs and out the back door with my phone. I stood over the spot by the magnolia tree. The dirt was fresh, barely disguised. I took photos, my flash illuminating the disturbed earth, the scattered leaves, the faint boot prints. Then I called Detective Holt. By 5 a.m., my backyard was a crime scene. Yellow tape, floodlights, forensic technicians in gloves and booties. Detective Holt arrived with a search warrant and a grim expression. Drew was pulled from bed, confused and furious, demanding to know what was happening. When he saw the officers in the yard, his face changed. The anger drained away and something else replaced it. Something I'd never seen on my husband's face before. Cold, calculated stillness. They dug up the duffel bag at 5:47 a.m. I stood on the back porch, wrapped in a blanket, watching as a technician unzipped it under the floodlights. Inside were documents, stacks of them. Bank statements, property deeds, a manila envelope stuffed with cash. And at the bottom, wrapped in a plastic bag, a small notebook filled with my mother's handwriting and a blood-stained kitchen towel. Detective Holt pulled me aside. "Olivia, do you recognize any of this?" I didn't, but Detective Holt did. Over the next 48 hours, she and her team unraveled what my husband had been hiding, and every layer was worse than the last. My mother was found the following afternoon. A jogger on the White Marsh Island Nature Trail spotted her lying in the tall grass near the water's edge, unconscious, dehydrated, with a fractured cheekbone and deep bruising across her ribs. She was airlifted to Memorial Health in Savannah, where a trauma surgeon named Dr. Alan Webb stabilized her. She'd been beaten and left in the marsh to die. When she woke up 18 hours later, groggy and confused, I was at her bedside holding her hand. She couldn't remember who attacked her. Traumatic amnesia, Dr. Webb explained, common after head injuries. The brain protects itself by blocking out the event. But my mother remembered everything before the attack, and what she told me destroyed the last shred of trust I had in my husband. 3 weeks before that night, she'd been going through her late sister's estate paperwork. My Aunt Carol had passed away in August, and Mom was the executor. While sorting financial records, she stumbled onto something that didn't belong. A life insurance policy on herself, Diane Marsh, taken out 18 months earlier. The beneficiary was Drew. He'd forged her signature and was paying premiums from an account she didn't know existed. The policy was worth $750,000. Mom had confronted Drew privately. He denied it, called it a mistake, said his insurance agent must have mixed up paperwork. But Mom didn't believe him, so she started digging. She found more. Drew's 3 auto shops were hemorrhaging money. He owed $210,000 to creditors, had maxed out lines of credit, and was 3 months behind on the lease for the Pooler location. He'd been hiding it from me using a separate bank account and a P.O. box I never knew about. And there was more. My mother had found evidence that Drew was involved with another woman, a 26-year-old bartender named Kelsey Palmer, who worked at a place on River Street. Mom had photographs, screenshots of texts, and bank records showing Drew had been sending Kelsey $1,500 a month for nearly a year. She'd gathered all of this into that notebook, the one found in the duffel bag, and was planning to bring it to me the night she was attacked. That's why she called me. That's why she told me not to tell Drew. She knew he was dangerous. She just didn't know how much. Drew was arrested and charged with aggravated assault and attempted murder. But here's where it got complicated, and where the story took a turn I never could have predicted. The fingerprints and boot prints at my mother's cottage didn't match Drew. They belonged to someone else. A man named Victor Solis, 29, with a record for assault and drug distribution in Chatham County. Detective Holt tracked him down within a week through a partial DNA match from skin cells found under my mother's fingernails. She'd fought back. Victor broke during interrogation. He said Drew had hired him for $8,000, half up front, to scare an old woman into handing over some papers. Victor claimed he didn't know the beating would go that far, that things got out of control. He gave up everything, the text messages, the cash payments, Drew's instructions to make it look like a home invasion gone wrong. But Victor said something else during that interrogation that stopped my heart. He said Drew had told him the target had no family, no one who would come looking. Drew had lied to Victor, told him my mother was a lonely widow with no children. He'd erased me from the story to make Victor comfortable with the job. Drew posted bail, $200,000, within 72 hours. His attorney, a slick defense lawyer named Richard Brennan, argued that Drew had no prior record, strong community ties, and that the evidence was circumstantial. The judge set conditions: ankle monitor, no contact with me or my mother, surrender of passport. I watched Drew walk out of the courthouse, and he looked at me across the parking lot with this expression I'll never forget. Not guilt, not shame, satisfaction. Like he still believed he was smarter than everyone in the room. I filed for divorce and a restraining order the next morning. 2 weeks later, on a Tuesday night, Drew violated both. I was in the kitchen warming a bottle. I should mention what happened 4 days after Drew's arrest, because it changed everything. A woman appeared at my front door. She was young, tired, holding a baby carrier with a sleeping infant inside. She introduced herself as Kelsey Palmer, the bartender. And the baby, a 3-week-old girl, was Drew's. Kelsey was terrified. She'd seen the news coverage, knew Drew was facing attempted murder charges, and was afraid of being connected to a violent criminal. She told me she'd gotten pregnant, that Drew had promised to leave me, that he'd set up an apartment for her in Thunderbolt and was paying her bills. When Drew got arrested, the money stopped. She had no family in Georgia, no savings, and a newborn she couldn't afford to feed. She didn't ask me to take the baby. She asked me for help, for direction, for someone to tell her what to do. I looked at that tiny girl, sleeping peacefully in her carrier, and something cracked open inside me. This child was innocent. She didn't choose any of this. I called social services. I called Detective Holt. And within 48 hours, I'd applied for emergency foster care. I named her Lily. So, when Drew showed up at my house that Tuesday night, drunk and raging, pounding on the door at 11 p.m., Lily was asleep in the nursery upstairs. I'd had security cameras installed the week before, 4 of them covering every entrance. When Drew smashed the side window with a landscaping brick and forced open the back door, every second was recorded in high definition. He found me in the hallway. His eyes were bloodshot, his breath sour with bourbon. He grabbed my wrist and twisted it until I cried out. He called me names I won't repeat. He said I'd destroyed his life, that everything was my fault, that if I just stayed out of it, none of this would have happened. Then he shoved me into the wall hard enough to crack the drywall, and I fell. What Drew didn't know was that I'd been sleeping with my phone in my pocket since the day he posted bail. I'd already dialed 911 before he broke the window. The dispatcher heard everything. Officers arrived in 6 minutes. They found Drew standing over me in the hallway, fist raised. He was tackled, cuffed, and dragged out of my house while Lily screamed upstairs and my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who'd heard the commotion and come running, held the baby and called an ambulance for me. I had a sprained wrist, a bruised collarbone, and a cut on my forehead that needed 4 stitches. But I was alive. And this time, Drew wasn't getting out. The security footage was devastating for his defense. 4 angles, crystal clear audio, Drew breaking in, assaulting me, his exact words captured in detail. Richard Brennan tried to argue temporary insanity from alcohol intoxication. The prosecutor, a woman named Dana Whitfield, played the footage for the judge and requested bail be revoked. The judge agreed. While Drew sat in the Chatham County Jail awaiting trial, Detective Holt kept digging. What she found in Drew's office at the Pooler shop was the final piece. Hidden inside a hollowed-out car manual on his bookshelf was a forged power of attorney document, supposedly signed by my mother, granting Drew full control over her financial assets. A forensic handwriting analyst named Dr. Teresa Kim examined it and found 13 points of inconsistency between the forged signature and my mother's real handwriting. Drew had been practicing her signature on scraps of paper stuffed into his work locker, dozens of attempts getting progressively closer to the real thing. The plan was now fully visible. Drew was drowning in debt. He'd taken out a fraudulent life insurance policy on my mother, worth $750,000. He'd forged a power of attorney to access her savings and property. He'd hired Victor to attack her and make it look like a random crime. If my mother had died, Drew would have collected the insurance, seized her assets through the forged documents, and used the money to cover his debts and fund his new life with Kelsey. But my mother survived. I followed the trail, and Drew's entire house of cards collapsed. The trial came in September of the following year. The courtroom in the Chatham County Courthouse was packed. My mother sat in the front row behind the prosecution table, her cheekbone healed but slightly uneven where the fracture had set. She held my hand as the jury was seated. Victor Solis testified first, under a plea agreement. He described in detail how Drew had recruited him, paid him, and instructed him to make the attack look like a burglary. He described beating my mother, dragging her into the marsh, and leaving her there. He cried on the stand. The jury watched in silence. I testified about everything, the night my mother called. Following Drew's truck. The sound of the shovel at 2 a.m., the duffel bag. The night he broke into my house. I kept my voice steady, even when Richard Brennan tried to rattle me during cross-examination, suggesting I was a scorned wife fabricating a narrative. Dana Whitfield objected. The judge sustained. Detective Holt presented the forensic evidence methodically, the wire transfers to Victor, the encrypted text messages, the forged documents, the fraudulent insurance policy, the security camera footage. Dr. Kim explained the handwriting analysis in terms the jury could follow, showing blown-up comparisons of the forged and genuine signatures. My mother took the stand last. Her memory of the attack itself was still incomplete. Fragments of a shadow in her doorway, the shock of the taser, pain. But she testified powerfully about what she'd discovered in the weeks before. Drew's debts, the affair, the insurance policy, the forged power of attorney. She looked directly at Drew as she spoke. I welcomed that man into my family. I trusted him with my daughter's happiness, and he repaid me by trying to end my life for money. The jury deliberated for 5 hours. When they returned, the forepersons stood and read the verdicts. Attempted murder in the first degree, guilty. Aggravated assault, guilty. Forgery and fraud, guilty. Conspiracy to commit murder, guilty. Insurance fraud, guilty. Drew showed no emotion. He stared straight ahead as the judge sentenced him to 52 years, no possibility of parole for 35. The bailiffs led him away, and he never looked back at me. Not once. In the hallway outside the courtroom, my mother held me while I sobbed. Detective Holt stood nearby, arms crossed, a quiet satisfaction in her expression. "It's over," Mom whispered into my hair. "He can't hurt us anymore." 5 months later, I stood in the same courthouse for a different hearing. This time, the room was small, warm, filled with afternoon sunlight. Lily sat in my lap, 14 months old now, with wispy blonde hair and curious gray eyes that tracked everything in the room. She was wearing a yellow dress my mother had picked out, and she kept grabbing my necklace and laughing. Judge Patricia Owens reviewed the adoption petition, the home study, the recommendations from social workers and character witnesses. She asked me why I wanted to adopt a child whose biological father had tried to destroy my family. "Because Lily didn't do any of those things," I said. "She's a baby. She deserves love, stability, and a mother who will fight for her every single day. I've been that mother since she was 3 weeks old. I'm asking this court to make it permanent." My mother testified in support. So did Detective Holt. So did Mrs. Chen, my neighbor, who described watching me care for Lily through every sleepless night and difficult day. Judge Owens granted the adoption. When she struck the gavel, Lily clapped her hands and said, "Mama," and the entire courtroom laughed through their tears. That was 2 years ago. Today, Lily is 3. She has a full head of curly blonde hair and a laugh that fills every room she walks into. She starts preschool in January, and she's already memorized half the alphabet from the books my mother reads to her every night. My mother lives with us now, in the guest room downstairs. Her physical scars have faded, and though she still sometimes startles at loud noises, she says Lily's laughter is the best medicine anyone ever prescribed. I went back to teaching last fall. 4th grade, same school, same classroom. My students don't know my story, but I teach them something I learned the hard way. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And asking for help isn't weakness. It's survival. Drew is in Georgia State Prison. He'll be 78 before he's eligible for parole. By then, Lily will have lived an entire life he'll never touch. Some nights, after Lily's asleep and Mom's reading in her room, I sit on the back porch and look out at the yard. The magnolia tree is still there. The hole Drew dug has long since grown over with grass. You'd never know anything had been buried there. But I know what was hidden beneath the surface of my marriage, beneath the charm and the smiles and the Sunday barbecues. I know what greed and desperation can do to a person, how it can hollow them out until there's nothing left but calculation and cruelty. If I could tell my younger self one thing, it would be this. The red flags aren't background noise. They're alarms. The late nights, the locked phone, the sudden anger over nothing. Those aren't quirks. Those are warnings. And the people who love you, really love you, your mother, your family, they see what you can't. Listen to them. Listen before it's too late. I used to think betrayal was something that happened in movies and true crime podcasts, not in real life, not in my life. But it found me anyway, wearing the face of the man I loved most. And if it hadn't been for my mother's courage, for her refusal to stay silent even when it nearly cost her everything, I might never have known until it was too late. My mother almost died protecting me. My daughter was born into chaos and abandonment, and I survived a man who saw my family as nothing more than a payday. But we're still here, all 3 of us. Scarred, yes. Changed, absolutely. But standing, together. And that's not just survival, that's victory. If this story resonated with you, please leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Have you ever discovered something hidden by someone you trusted? How did you find the strength to move forward? I'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to like, share this video, and subscribe so you never miss our next story. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. And a gentle reminder, the stories on this channel contain fictionalized elements created for educational purposes. If you prefer different content, feel free to explore other videos that suit your interests. Stay safe, trust your instincts, and God bless.